So there was a little bit of interest shown on the forum about how we did 10 gigs digital and just generally, you know, what's happening on 10 gigs, and we thought it would be worthwhile just talking a little bit about it. It's not particularly technical, it's just observing, you know, what's going on and perhaps suggesting some ideas as to how people could get going on it. 10 gigs is not new. Where's Mr. Lawrence? There's John. Recognise the photo?
Yeah.
So that's John. I think that was in the 80s.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So it's not new. 10 gigs not new, and actually it is easy. It was easy, and it still is very easy. On transmit in the old in the 70s, 80s, we used these Solfan heads. I'm not sure if they're still around, but basically gun diodes, which you can modulate directly 10 milliwatts out. Bob Platts did a little board called the Gun Mod, which was a modulator board, the details of which are actually on the wiki. I've scanned the leaflet that came with it, so all the details are on the wiki, so we could still do that. And today, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, there's a thing on eBay called an HB100, which is a Doppler module. And if you like, that's almost the modern day equivalent of the Bob Platts.
There's a 24 gig version as well. Or?
Yeah, I understand there is. Yeah. Analog sat receiver or a Comtech with an LMB on the front end. So you need a Bob Platts LMB, which have got a 9 gig local oscillator. But I think there are other versions around from Germany. I saw some being Bob AVU, which had got some yesterday. And there was several articles about the Marconi blue caps, using those on transmit, on receive and transmit even. And as far as dishes go, well, that's the easy part because satellite dishes run on 10 gigs. There was the famous penny feed. There isn't one in here. I think I've seen one somewhere. So it really is, you know, relatively easy to get going on 10 gigs. Just like 5.6 is easy. You know, it's bizarre. The higher you go in frequency, almost the easier it is to get going. You know, compared to 23 SEMS where you have to do preamps and Yagis and good coax, and this is easy stuff. And it goes a long way when conditions are right. I mean, typically, I presume, John, when you were doing the Wales thing, 60, 70, 80 kilometres.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah, on 10, 15, 20 milliwatts. Yeah. There was lots of activity. I just happened, while I was putting this together, I happened to dip into CQTV172. And there was several articles in there on 10 gigs and the DX workings. There's the film of the GW people is on the BATC YouTube channel if you want to go and have a look. We put that on there. And you get some super ducting over C paths. Very, very interesting. I mean, Terry was saying actually at Christmas time he was watching Dutch 10 gigs on a 300, 400, 500 kilometre path. But Bob Platts, back in the 80s and 90s, made an effort to go and sit down at the seafront and work Holland in that sea duct just above the water. Warm air, cold sea gives you a duct. And he did several exploits, and in fact we did one from Dungeness down here by the power station up to Rotterdam in 2000, I think it was. And I was with John G8GTZ, and you can see we're not parked up on the cliff top, we're actually parked down at sea level on the beach. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that was an August day, you got this sort of brown haze appear above the sea. And that's a sign of it, an inversion layer. And we were working, some guys over in Rotterdam, I've got some video in a minute, but the really interesting thing, one of the guys had his dish down on the beach as well, had a camera alongside it, and we were watching him, and we saw the ship, the beginning of the ship, and we saw the end of the ship, but we didn't see the middle of the ship. So, you know, some really interesting things.
The ducting band can be quite narrow, a few 100 feet or less.
Yeah, yeah.
And we used to find that with temperature at the end of the day, the band would change in height. There was another amateur who was about 200 feet below me at home, and it would come up on mine, disappear on his, and then it would gradually shift over till he lost the signal, and I got it.
Yeah.
We're only 200 feet apart or less.
Yeah.
Rain scatter's another one, Bob.
Sorry?
Rain scatter's another
Yeah, rain scatter, of course. Yeah, yeah. But I got a quick video. I mean, this is what I recorded down at. It was what I recorded down at Dungeness, and I mean, he was loud. He was very, very loud. It got a lot louder than this, and it got to the point where we could just use LMBs. We didn't have to use the dish. And there's his dish down on the seafront. They were using very, very wide band because they're using satellite receivers, whereas we were using the narrower stuff. But, you know, yeah, 2000. But we don't seem to do this sort of thing anymore. You know, I think we've perhaps forgotten it a little bit. So that was what we were doing, as it says, you know, August 2000, and that was one of these sort of organised activity days, if you like. Bob Platts in particular organised it with the Dutch guys, and so it just shows what you can do if you pre-arrange stuff. It was fortunate; it was rather nice weather that weekend, but yeah, I'm not sure what would have happened if it wasn't. So then we all got interested in this other stuff, these ones and noughts stuffs, and the lower bands, 146 and 70 SEMS and RBTV, and I was still doing narrowband 10 gigs, and of course doing interesting stuff. Dave was there as well, and one day we sat in the pub and we were talking about what we were doing. That, you know, we were doing 146 and 70 SEMS RBTV, and RIFs on 10 gigs are, oh, hang on a minute, if we take our RBTV gear, we can just drive it straight into the IFs on our microwave gear. And so that was, you know, I was talking to Tony CBW yesterday, and he has done exactly the same thing. And so if you have got any gear for the microwave bands, narrowband equipment for the microwave bands, and you've got RBTV gear on 144 or 432, you know, you're home and dry. You can get up onto the microwave bands with digital. And, you know, the main reason, of course, is that whilst FM can be multiplied up from 23 or 13, you can't do that with digital, so you've got to have a linear transversion. But all of the transverters we use for 2.3, 3.4, 5.6, 10, 24 gigs and up all use either 144 or 432. And, of course, that's exactly where we're operating DATV. So we did some experiments, and what happens if, you know, you drive your transverter with DATV? Well, it does work. And, you know, normally these transverters are fairly well engineered because they're built for narrowband. There's one or two systems issues. Most transverters will need a bit more power than you have out of your driver. But there again, you've probably got a 5-watt amplifier after your driver. So, you know, you need an intermediate power amp. So I had to build another 70 SEMS power amp, which was lower power than my normal one. You need to watch the shoulders, need to back the drive off. Although they're surprised, I've got a DB6NT on 10 gigs and it's surprisingly good. I'll back it off by about 3 or 4 dB, and the shoulders are 20, 25. We did some experiments where I tried varying the driver level into it, and there was definitely a point where I got into compression, and the MER started to go down, even though I was running more power. But we'll touch on that this afternoon. On receive, using transverters means it's easy because you've only got the one dish feed. You don't have to worry about an LMB or whatever. You use your transverter both ways. And so, you know, you've got the common feed. Your frequency problem, when we first started, of course, we then had to go down from 10 gigs, we still do actually, down from 10 gigs into your SUP2400 up to L band. And all that really does is it means you have to have yet another printout in the shack to work out. So
Every time we have to do the sums.
yeah, because Dave uses a different IF, so ends up on a different transmit frequency to me. So then we have to do the numbers to convert down to 437, which ends up at, yeah, that's probably the worst thing about it. But of course, if you're using a Serret, you can tune directly to 70 sems or 2 meters. You might need some more gain. A lot of the narrowband transverters are designed to run into things like 817s or 897s, or just your normal narrowband rig. You might need some more gain at 432 or 144, whatever your IF is. It adds to the complication, but we found having narrowband is useful. So you set the contact up on narrowband and then go to TV, so you can align your dish and everything. Otherwise, you may struggle. But of course, that makes it more complicated because then you need to be able to switch between the TV gear and the narrowband gear. So you end up with 10 relays and you get 3 more switches to go wrong. And the thing that caught me out was my TV systems. I put 12 volts up the receive line on receive, so that powers the preamp and throws the masthead relay. The DB6NT system takes 12 volts up on transmit to go into transmit. So it all worked fine in the shack, but the first time we went out, I couldn't see Dave, and he could see me, and what it was, I was putting 12 volts into the NT from my receive power. So it's things like that you've really got to watch. Otherwise, it is, you know, if you've got a transverter for any band, I think you'll find that, you know, getting on with TV is fairly simple. And so you end up with a system something like that. The obligatory ports down picture. And then I run a small module on 70 sems to go into the DB6NT and then into your normal dish system. My system is, my transverter is actually in that box there. And then on receive, it's a simple matter of coming down into something like mini tuner. You may want, as I say, you may want a little bit more gain here, but that should work. And Dave actually uses his ports down on 10 gigs. So, and that was the most recent test. So that's 138 kilometres. I was here at Dunkery Beacon over Minehead. Dave is up near Clee Common, which is Cheltenham. 138 kilometres, and that's not narrowband. That's 2 megasymbols. So that's 2 megs wide, and we've got a 23 dB MER. So there's lots of margin in hand. So we're all desperately trying to find the longer path, because we believe it'll go a lot further. The first test we ever did was Walbury Hill down to Lulworth, which was 92 kilometres. We actually did it during field day, and this was the day when I got into trouble with the 12 volts. So that was that Portsdown? That wasn't, was it then?
It might not have been actually.
No.
It might have been a DigiFin.
Yeah. You can see it was a bit marginal, but I mean, we were still finding our way around. Yeah. 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 So that was Dave's site. That's the Lulworth site that he uses down on the south coast. It's a very good site. And that's the mini tune bleep. That's the that is digithin then, isn't it?
That's digit.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the highest mega symbols you've tried now?
Hey,
What's the highest mega symbols you've tried?
we only tried 2 actually.
4 would have gone.
Yeah, 4. I mean, if you look at that, 4 mega symbols would have gone, I think, on that.
What frequency were you transmitting on that? Do you remember?
I was transmitting on 10367.
Right.
And I transmit on 10373.
Right. I mean, there is an easy way of making a receive setup, of course. If you use the Octagon
Yeah.
LNB, which
Yeah.
has a 27 meg crystal in it, it basically converts 10368 down to 618 megs,
Yeah.
which a Cyric tuner could tune
Yeah.
into. If
Yeah.
you change the crystal to 26 megs, it ups the frequency of the IF very
Yeah.
nicely, which will fit into a standard sapphire
How
receiver,
does it?
which many of them can do with 2 mega symbols per second.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So as Jeff has just said, standalone receive is very easy. And the Octagon, I hadn't realised you could change the crystal in the Octagon.
I've got one, and I've actually phase locked it as well.
Yeah, I know people have played with phase locking.
You have to experiment.
Yeah. Yeah,
with it to
the
make it-
Farnham Web SDR uses an Octagon with a phase lock on it on 10 gigs, so it's pretty stable. Malcolm, you did some investigation into low cost transverters, W1G8Z.
Yeah, I'm in the process of building it at the moment, so I'll let you know.
So W1G8Z does some PCBs, and it's a mimic, basically mimics, isn't it?
It's basically mimics, yeah. There's some fairly low cost mimics that you can get from.
Hang on, start again.
Yeah, the W1GHZ one is basically mimics and pipe cap filters. And you can use a separate local oscillator, which takes it up to 10224 if you're using narrowband. And you can probably get that with the ADF 4351 and take a harmonic off that with some pipe cap filters and some mimics to multiply it up a bit. So it's a work in progress, but easy to do, and the circuit boards are fairly cheap. And Paul W1GHZ is very good. You can send up to four PCBs for about $3 or something like that. So it's quite good. The only difficult bits to get are the mixers and the mimics, and they're available from Minikits in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is another approach, of course, to making these transverters, and my personal approach has been for years is to use the SMA modularized type products. So use mixers. For the local oscillator, I've used the Stellex. Now, whether they're around so much these days, I'm not so sure. Stellex YIG oscillators, very easy to program, based on the LMX2326, which has got an old chip now. And I've made a range of transverters based on those, and they're very straightforward to plug these bits together.
Yep. Yep. So there are other routes other than DB6NT for transverters. DB6NT used to do quite a good low cost transverter, but he stopped doing that one. But I don't know if SQ Labs, does anybody know? No, I don't think so. But it's worth looking into. There are ways to get power out on 10 gigs. And there is this HB100, which I haven't played with. Have you played with, Terry, at all?
Tuning screw underneath that sticker on there to change the brick.
Yeah.
What's that? Can you say that again, Terry?
Yeah, I've played a little bit with them on the bench, nothing in the field, but very easy to retune frequency. There is a good Facebook group, the 10 gigahertz Facebook group, very much into these, especially the lads over in Holland.
All right.
Lots of little mods to them.
Yeah.
And I've been playing with the 24 gig version as well.
Right.
If you remove that sticker you can see there, the quality control sticker, that's where the tuning screw for the oscillator is. So you just change the frequency.
The grub screw is actually in the metal case rather than on the electronics inside. I made a mistake.
You got a comment, Terry? Go on.
So was just saying that the grub screw is actually attached to the metal case, you can see. Because I made the mistake of taking the case off and throwing it away and looking for the grub screw, but it's actually attached to the bit that I'd now found in the bin. So.
Yeah, I've worked with the HP100s. There's quite a useful little mod, which is to actually take the grub screw out, glue in a decent nut, and then use that with a screw, with a finer thread than the coarse thread that's on the slug, and you can actually tune them quite nicely, and they work very, very well. The problem with them is the receive and the transmit antenna in a different place. they're about an inch apart, just over an inch apart, which would make them difficult to fit in front of a dish.
And so what are you doing with them?
Just across the shack at the moment, you know.
What, video or?
Yeah, the group's using them for video and for wideband FM.
Right.
Nearly everybody's modifying them and putting an SMA output on them.
Right.
Because of what you've heard there.
Yeah.
There's 2 patch antennas run down either side of the PCB.
Yeah. Good. Okay, and I mean F5 OEO, the Everest, the guy who did the Portsdown core software, has actually even played modulating them with digital, and he has achieved something. But it's I don't think it's really recommended, but it does just show, you know, where people are going. So yeah. And of course, dishes and feeds are easy. There's loads of published designs. All of the old stuff that was done in the 70s and 80s can be just applied to what we've got now. Sky dishes are £1 from your local tip. You know, it's so easy to get on. And I mean, Sky dishes have got 30 plus dB. You know, so you've got lots of antenna gain. They're really good. FM isn't dead. There are a number of ATV repeaters, and we actually just got a one for the Isle of Wight has just received its NOV. So yeah, you'll receive though, aren't you? This ETCC map is. Oh no, you are on there.
Well, 13, it's on the bottom.
You are.
You are. Transmit 13 and 3.
Yeah, yeah. Lincoln, of course, big 10 gigs area. So there is stuff around. BH, that's, I mean, Bob often sees BH, Bob AVU, you've seen BH.
I often see BH, Lincolnshire, all the way down there, and I think Dave got actually fed up with me one time, ringing up saying, oh, I can see it, go on to the ATC, I'll show you it coming back.
Yeah, BH does run quite a bit of power, mind you, so, yeah, so, but no, so there's lots going on, you know, it's there. It's good to experiment. I was wondering, we're going to hear about the Pluto in a minute, which will go up to 6 gigs. Well, if you mix that with an ADF, you're not ADF 4351. You're not far away from 10 gigs. I don't know the exact numbers. And of course, it's unfair, but down in the Mediterranean, they do some fantastic paths on 10 gigs. It's they've got this thing called the sunshine, which helps, the nice weather. But there's been some great paths from sort of Malta, Italy, across to Spain. I mean, some of the things the EAs are running on 10 gigs is just not fair, really. So, but no.
They've been doing those paths of those HP100s.
Have they?
250 kilometres on them.
250 kilometres, yeah, on a HP100, yeah. So, you know, I think the message is, you know, it's TV and, you know, it's great fun, easy to experiment with. Don't just think that we're all about digital. You know, there is so much more in this. As you've heard in the last 2 sessions, you know, FM has got a lot of mileage left in it. So that's good. Any other comments on 10 gigs? Bob, you probably ought to speak into the speaking stick.
Being that I played about with 10 gigs for many a years, like Terry and everybody else, I live down at sea level, and for me even to see VL at Lincoln, I can't see it direct. I've got 2 hills, and the one thing that, as we said earlier on, rain scatter. Other things is, because you can't see it doesn't mean you can't work it. Look for a pylon, look for a tall chimney, a building, and you'll be surprised what it will bounce off of.
Yeah.
Because that's how I see our local repeater.
Yeah.
I can't see it. I go to a power station, I go to a big building, miles down the road, I can't even see. But you bounce off of everything.
I've worked people on 10 gigs narrowband using rain scatter.
Yeah.
They were south of me and you beamed north.
Yeah,
It's
but you're not beamed at me. I don't need to beam at you because
yeah.
that's
yeah.
what happens.
Yeah. So great band. Great band.
I enjoy it.
I've got a comment about the HP 100s.
Brilliant. I think this is a new theme running here, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got interested in these, and I got my partner who works in RF to take them to the lab, and she tested one to destruction to see, you know, how high we could go before it blew up and how low we'd go before it stopped oscillating, just so we'd know. So basically we found 2.7 volts is where it would start to reliably oscillate.
Yeah.
At 6.9 it would pop. So just be aware of that when you're building your modulators for those.
And I mean, what frequency-wise did you?
We moved it into the where we would go,
Yeah.
so 10.4.
10.3, 10.3, 10.4.
Yeah, yeah, it moved quite easily down to there.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's a good point about the 10 gigs band. The 10 gigs band is split into two. 10 to 10 125, I think it is. Then there's a break, and 10 250, 10 450. If you're doing anything and you're building anything, I would suggest build it for that upper segment. The lower segment, we've got repeaters and stuff in it, but you know the tenure on that is probably less secure than the tenure on the top end. I'm not saying we're going to lose anything. I'm just saying if you're spending money, I'd spend it on the 10, 250, 10. Is it 250, 450? Check those numbers. I'm not prepared, but it's yeah. We've got a couple of hundred megs, so use it. You know.
Nigel, 2E0EHH. Interesting that the gentleman at the back said he was using bounce to get a signal.
Yeah.
Is that can you use a bounce on any other frequency, or is it solely just on 10 gigs?
I mean, they do. I mean, the narrowband boys do aircraft scatter on 1.2, 1.3 gigs.
10 gigs is the magic band.
Yes, it is.
That's one to aim for, yeah.
The right size to get rain scatter. 24 gigs is absorbed by rain, unfortunately. It's too near the rain absorption frequency. Any object will reflect it. I pointed the wrong way at a mountain and received people in the other direction. It's as simple as that. Just a little observation on the sea ducting. Now, I do it at Sheppey. There's a car park which is about 20 feet above sea level. Just a small point, make sure the tide's in. Because when it's out, it goes out a long way and it does affect things. So you get disappointed for a few hours if it's not in. Check the tide table. But I picked up the Belgian beacon, which is below the horizon. There's no doubt about it. There's a bump of the earth in the way. It comes in beautifully via that ducting mechanism. So
but 10 gigs seems to be a magic band for bounce.
And useful for bits as well. It's easy to build.
Yeah. And as Jeff says, the raindrops are about the right size. That's why 10 gigs rain scatter is
And I took a small dish down to Dover to check for a beacon. It was about 12 inches big, a terrible little thing. And I heard the beacon crashing in, and also guys calling CQ, believe it or not, from Czechoslovakia via rain scatter. And you can see the rain front. You know, that was on narrowband, obviously, but it showed how it
there are sites on the web where you can look at the rain, and they do rain scatter predictions with maps. But no, you know, it is a good band to play with. Yeah. These HP 100s sound interesting. We probably ought to publish something. Yeah, I think we do need an article on what HP 100s can do and sort of prompt that. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, right. Time. Anything else? Any other comments? 10 gigs.
Stupid question. So, what's the general mechanism within the tele community for arranging on-air trials and tests and skeds and all that kind of stuff?
BATC forum is your best place.
Okay.
And this is a general message. It's all very well emailing somebody and say, let's go out next Thursday to the Lake District. That's all right. You'll set that up, but nobody else knows. And you know, so we encourage you to use the forum. There's a topic called
activity and contest discussion.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So if you're going out, and I try and do it, you know, if you're just going out, I went out the other day to test with Arthur and the guys in Luton, and I just put it on there because, you know what, you know, somebody else might have been around. And so just post it up there saying, I'm thinking about going up here to do some tests with Fred on this band next Thursday.
Okay.
You know, then other people, you may be surprised. Oh,
Okay.
Just to follow on from that, so if you got two colleagues going from point A to point B and you hear about it on the
forum.
on
Yeah.
the forum, can somebody else join in? You
Yeah.
know, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, what
And
we would
try and learn
encourage
from
is
that, yeah.
chip in on the forum. I mean, as far as talkback goes, we use 144.750 where possible. We do have the dxspot.tv site, which is a chat site, but we really need to look at revamping that.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid some of us resort to text messages once you're on site as well, because that tends to be a reliable way of doing it. But at least if you announce what you're doing on the forum before you go, other people do have an opportunity to say, oh, I'll come out and go on the hilltop as well. So,
Yeah.
and actually, you get, you know, it gives people an opportunity to come up and meet you and have a look what you're doing,
And
which
so
is
if it's
always
not
good.
too-
I mean, that was going to happen at Clee in the summer, but we didn't quite do it.
So there's another, and if it's not too far, then you get, like I say, it's a chance for you to say, oh, I can just make that. I can come up and have a look and
Yeah, exactly.
and learn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bob, final question.
Oh, go on then. The fine. I weren't saying. I'm just looking at you. I weren't going to say anything.
Oh, I thought you were.
No. The one thing is that you were saying about be careful about where you're transmitting in the spectrum of the band, right? I've heard so many people say, "How do I know where I am in the band?" Very simple. To check transmitter, frequency counter goes up to 3 gigs. LMB that's on 9 gig DRO. And I've done it the same because we worked the Tuesday night contest, and it's so easy.
Yeah.
Even using the old burglar alarm Solfan heads that are in the corner. If Kevin wasn't looking, I'd be in here and I'd be whipping them because they go straight on to 10 gigs. But it's so easy. A frequency counter
Yeah.
into your LMB.
Yeah.
Just make sure it has got a 9 gig oscillator in it, and you will get a really good readout, and you'll know that you are in where you should
And
be.
the other thing is, Jeff mentioned them. These octagon phase lock loop LMBs are about
Yes.
25 quid off eBay. You can put them into an SDR, into your RTL dongle, and you can
And same thing.
you can, you know, they're stable enough as they stand to decode sideband. You can listen. They're a useful receiver.
I used it to point my satellite dish, believe it or not.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, you know, 25 quid for the LMB, 10 quid for the stick, 35 quid, you got yourself a 10
Well-
gigs receiver.
Well, we were discussing.
Sorry?
Suitable for sale as well.
Yeah, you can use them, yeah.
If you do look around, there are some LMBs. We brought some with us the other day that are 5-6 quid, and some of them have got 9 gig DROs in them, some haven't.